Okay, we're starting to have some people from in-house trickle in now, Dylan, but we've resent the invitations for the off-site visitors, and
okay.
Just get ready to start. So, thanks for your interest in our Hantel Tech webinar series. We also at the very end, we also have Priya here on site who's going to help share about some of the 3D technologies and the samples that she's brought. But we're having today's speaker, Dylan Oliver, who has kindly, in very short notice, sat in for Rich Stump, who was unfortunate he couldn't make it today. But without much further ado, we'll just let Dylan start and share about 3D printing technologies.
Alrighty.
Oh, and
can you guys hear me okay?
Sorry, Dylan, I forgot one thing that I meant to add is, I guess everyone please save the questions for the last 10, 15 minutes. So, yeah, go ahead and take it away.
Okay. All right, my name is Dylan Oliver. I'm the Northwest Accounts Manager, actually up here in Seattle, and I'm just standing in for Rich Stump. This presentation is really about 3D printing and specifically how it's being applied in the medical industries. And so I just want to run through kind of a brief outline here. We're going to be going through the basics of the 3D printing technology, capabilities, materials. We're also going to go through some of the prototyping methodologies that have been available for a long time, some other ways of achieving prototypes, various clinical applications, medical equipment, and then some of the rapid manufacturing aspects involving hearing aids. So this is just a brief list of some of customers that we have with Objet. And one of the most fun things about our job and working with prototyping is that we're involved with all different industries and all different kinds of projects. And so it could be anything from medical devices to art and media and film to automotive design to shoes. It's really across the board. I mean, ultimately, anybody who's designing with 3D CAD of any kind is a potential Objet user. So we're going to start here just with the specifics on the 3D printing and prototyping capabilities with Fathom as far as the services go, and then also with Objet on the technology side. So Objet offers 3 families of systems that have varying capabilities. On the less expensive end, you have our desktop family, which would include the Objet 24 and Objet 30 3D printing systems. These are really highly accurate precision machines that are offered at a lower cost. They use piezoelectric inkjet style print heads, only we're jetting a liquid photopolymer instead of ink. And that liquid photopolymer is jetted onto the build tray, planed to 16 or 30 microns, and then cured with ultraviolet light on the fly. As you move up in the line, you get to the Eden family, and it's really designed for optimal throughput. It's going to be a system that would have 8 print heads versus the 2 on the desktop systems. It's going to have a much wider array of materials available, from biocompatible dental materials to all sorts of rigid and elastomeric materials. And then when you get to our flagship line, the Connex family, we also have 3 sizes in as well. That system can run all of the single materials that the Edens can, but can also create composite blends. And that's actually done by creating a dot matrix of 2 adjacent materials to produce a resulting composite material. So some of the examples that Priya has brought there will show a blend starting with Vero White Plus, which is a rigid 88D plastic, and a Tango Black Plus, which is a Shore 27A flexible material. And then by the proximity of the dot matrix that's deposited onto the tray with each 16 and 30 micron layer, you create these different flexibilities of material and different stiffnesses of material. So it's similar in the way that your home or office printer is creating color with RGB or CMYK. That proximity near and on top of one another creates a full spectrum of color. Objet has achieved this by using materials. So with Fathom, we also provide, in addition to the sales of the system, the 3D printing services as well. So that's going to allow you to get really high resolution models of the service, multiple materials in a single part, as I just described. It's great for any kind of proof of concept models, sales, visualizing models for earlier in the design stage, focus groups, and packaging. Anytime you need to prove something out, earlier is better. Kind of the mantra of the prototyper is to fail early and to fail often, because you don't want to make your mistakes late in the process. We also provide medical modeling, CT data conversion, RTV molding, which is room temperature vulcanization, rapid tooling, model finishing if you wanted to do painted parts, metal plated parts, clear coating, things like this, and of course prototype machining as well. Now, what really sets Objet systems aside, apart from the other technologies out there is the accuracy, the speed, and the ease of use. And Objet prints in layers of just over half of 1/1000th of an inch, which means that the parts when they come out of the machine are very smooth. They have very clean surfaces. They don't require a lot of finishing if you want to go to a post-process such as painting. And that's achieved with the high resolution, 600 by 600 DPI, and just very good accuracy overall on the tray. And you can see those specs there, but 0.1 to 0.3 millimeters over the whole tray in accuracy. The largest build tray size is about 500 by 400 by 250 millimeters. That's roughly just under 20 by 15.5 by 8, roughly. But the materials are really easy to glue and bond, so if you wanted to do much larger parts, that's certainly achievable. There's some rough pricing outlines here. It's really geometry dependent, but it's roughly 90 cents a gram for the model material and about 30 cents a gram for the support material. Now, the systems themselves vary pretty widely from the low end, kind of a system-only package on the Objet 24, all the way up to the Connex 500, our largest flagship system there, and that's in the price range. So, and the cost on the material itself is roughly 30 cents a gram for the model and about 13 cents a gram for support. There's several different materials, so that's an average, but that's about right. This character here you see on the right is actually printed all in one piece. I don't know if that sample made it along with Priya today, but it's a beautiful example of the level of detail that you can achieve as well as the different shades and materials. Now, all these materials, like I mentioned, are inkjet-based. They're acrylic photopolymers. And there's a wide range at your disposal. With white, black, blue, gray in the rigid D scale. We have a polypropylene simulant. We have an ABS plastic simulant. It's got a much higher HDT, so it's got better temperature resistance. We even have biocompatible materials, which we'll talk about in just a few slides. And then a range of elastomeric materials, which Objet offers the only platform available that can do not only the flexible materials, but the combinations of different materials in one print. So the biocompatible material from Objet is really appealing in many different applications. This is going to allow for prolonged skin contact of over 30 days, or up to 30 days, excuse me. And you can even do subcutaneous contact of around 24 hours. So that's great for any clinical testing, when you're working with medical devices. It's got ISO certification, and it's a colorless material. It's transparent, so that allows for great visualization depending on the application, whether that's for a surgical guide or for a stent or something like that. So, that's been a very popular material in the medical field. There's a couple more materials coming out, I believe, this year. I know a white one for sure, and possibly one other. So that's a real exciting sector for Objet. So once the part is produced, you still have to sterilize the biocompatible materials. You need to use what are called cold processes, as the higher heat can cause deformation. So some common ones being formaldehyde, methylene oxide, plasma sterilization. gamma radiation, electron beam radiation. And all of these must be followed under a specific guideline to ensure that it is, in fact, a biocompatible material. Now, there are other prototyping methodologies as well, which I'll go through. Other ways of achieving it, ways that we've done in the past. Silicone molding has been done for a long, long time. There's various ways to create the master pattern for that. Could be anything from sculpted, CNC'd, or 3D printed. The urethanes, you don't have the FDA approval, but silicone molding application is also great for inserts, shielding, anytime you need to do lower volumes, but maybe more than you would want to do a 3D print. Now here's an example of rapid tooling applications, which is one of the really exciting ways of using an Objet 3D printer. Rather than printing the pattern, you can actually print the tool itself. And we have customers using this to do injection molding in-house with prototype tooling. So you're not going to achieve a lot of shots and cycles, but you are going to be able to poop out that tool before you go to cut metal. So here's another example. You can see here the Vero Gray, the printed tool, and you're going to have drop cores. So you're going to get acetals to 450 degrees Fahrenheit, and you're going to 10 shots. You're not going to get a whole lot of parts out of that tool, but you're going to be able to proof it out. There's some more examples here. You can see the printed tool mud base going in, and then the resulting injection. So Fathom also provides design services. You've got to get somehow to this 3D data to be able to print it. So we help customers, a range of companies, go from concept to prototype and on to production. So industrial design, of course, sketches, any UI, user experience, storytelling, environments, really help encapsulate the intent of the product and any brand that may go along with it. And that rolls into the packaging, of course, too. If you want to take the product all the way along, it needs to look right and it needs to be displayed properly. Fathom also provides the packaging, graphic design, any CAD, prep, for whatever the need may be. Some more packaging application, design applications, branding again, web design, campaign development, the whole overarching story of the product line, the market strategy, just a broad range of service. Now we'll get into some of the clinical applications. A couple of the images are a little bit intense. Just wanted to warn you, not over the top or anything, but just so that you're aware. And so we'll just go through kind of an industry overview, some of the technologies for imaging, the way 3D printing is being applied, and object-specific solutions, and then some case studies. So hospitals in the U.S., unfortunately, are driven by the throughput and the volume. Advanced processes are making treatment and treatment times and diagnosis faster, shorter times in the hospital. They always want to reduce the cost, but ultimately it's about reducing errors and loss of human life. Financial costs are high, repeated hospitalizations are expensive, and if something bad happens, malpractice lawsuits can be extremely costly. So all of these are really ways to help alleviate some of this condensed VOR times, the ways that these technologies are being applied. So on the imaging side, there's really three main modalities: magnetic resonance imaging, MRI, computed tomography, CT, and ultrasound, US. So in order to get a part actually produced on a 3D printer, you need to get that 3D digital data. And it's just serendipitous that 3D printers are layer-based technology, so are MRI and CT. So the actual conversion process with modern software is quite straightforward. Now, the data that comes out of these different imaging modalities is referred to as DICOM data, and that's digital imaging, communication, and medicine. It's a generic file format that's just allowing physicians and technicians to easily transfer that data and analyze that data. So all of these images that are created are volumetric data sets. They still require additional processing in order to actually have it be what we consider a 3D mesh solid watertight volume that could then be sent to a 3D printer. And of course, any of this setup needs to be done by someone who knows what they're doing, of course. And the process of taking that DICOM data and then bringing it down to your intended density is known as surface extraction, segmentation, also thresholding. So you can actually select for the density of the tissue or the bone that you're trying to isolate. And then once you've isolated that, you can export as a file format that a 3D printer can read. So there's several different softwares out there for medical imaging and segmentation. Here's a few examples. Personally, I'm familiar with ANSYS from Mayo Clinic and Mimics from Materialize. I've worked with both of those softwares myself. I'm not as familiar with some of these others, but there's a wide range out there. All of them are going to allow for the visualization. Some are better than others at the actual segmentation and then exportation for 3D printing. So we're going to go through some of the 3D printing applications for the medical field, and that's going to include surgical planning, medical education, surgical guides, customized guides, anything for reconstructive surgery, plates, pins, and the sort, implant verifications, and cardiovascular analysis. So surgical planning is probably the original use, I would say, for 3D technologies, starting early on with stereolithography, which is a different technology. It uses a similar liquid resin and a laser to sinter. It's been around since the late 80s. And so the surgical planning model or biomodel is really used to predefine the steps in a surgical process, as well as to really help with reducing overall surgery times, reducing the exposure to infections, and improving the overall experience. And it's just being able to take that physical anatomy and convert it to a physical structure that you can hold in your hand, talk about, and plan with is a very, very powerful tool. Here's a few examples just of CT scan data converted to a volumetric solid that's a mesh that can be exported to a 3D printer. Here you can see in the Mimics software some screenshots of the actual thresholding process where we're isolating bone mass as well as isolating the teeth, which are the higher density. So you can really segment all the data and then export your intended and then send that to the printer. So here you can see dual material, light on the teeth and the mandible nerve, and then the translucent for the rest of the skull. So another big application is going to be for education. You know, textbooks is not enough. Cadavers, there aren't often enough, and sometimes, you know, religious constraints are involved. These 3D printed models are really going to allow for students to understand complex anatomies and get to know them up close and really interact with them in a way that's not achievable with any kind of digital data. 3D renderings are great, they look beautiful, but you can only learn so much from looking at it on a screen. And with cont'd technology, you can actually segment and show multiple portions of that DICOM data and visualize it, as you can see in these two images here, which is extremely powerful and unique in the industry. So here's another example that's very, very crucial. The ability to take that human anatomy, that highly specific, highly accurate data, and be able to generate any surgical implant on the biomodel prior to ever opening up the patient and initiating the surgery. And this is reducing OR times dramatically, reducing complications, and because the ORs are shorter, reducing the overall infection and, of course, cost. So the confidence is just much higher when you go into a surgery, knowing that everything's pre-designed on anatomy-specific 3D prints. So here's another example. This would be for a reconstructive plate, maybe patching a portion of the skull if you have a degenerative bone disease. So this is showing here the object model being printed. Of course, we have the full skull as well, and then we printed a portion to be replaced. Although this can't go straight into the patient, we can use this in silicone molding, a traditional method that we went over earlier, to produce a biocompatible material that can then be implanted. And we know it's going to fit because we've already tested it on the 3D print. So of course, you want these things to be perfect before they go into the body. Traditionally, if there was an error, the surgeon would, and the team would actually have to make modifications right there, grinding, bending, whatever it may be, to make it fit. Knowing when you go into the surgery that everything's going to fit improves confidence and, of course, reduces the OR times. And of course, the models themselves just generally are providing improvements all across the board. Even at the, of course, medical device design stage, you're going to be able to proof things out and know how they're going to work. Here's another example of cardiovascular analysis. Flow of the blood vessels is very hard to model on a computer. Beauty is that we can take this digital data and we can create real-world examples, and we can even imitate it with elastomeric materials, and you can run liquids through, and you can even do particle imaging analysis. So very powerful new tools, new applications. So here's another example here, clinical application. This is an older UCLA case study that was quite famous. It was an early introduction for the U.S. to the Objet 3D printers, as they came available in the U.S. around 2000. So you can see this was in 2002. And a team of surgeons used Objet 3D prints throughout the process in the preparation and planning to help the separation of the conjoined twins. And ultimately, the biggest part was the visualization of the blood vessels, which had to be rerouted. So you can see here some of the stats. Operation took 22 hours instead of 97 hours. Surgeons attributed a lot of that to the ability of having these surgical planning models. Okay, so we're going to go through now from applications into some of the actual equipment and devices. And then go through here specifically more challenges and then how Objet is helping offer the solution. So with medical devices, they are highly accurate and high-end, and there's really no room for error. People's lives are on the line, and the cost of an error is unacceptable. So the usability, ergonomics, and the overall design are highly crucial. If the tools aren't designed properly, cramps are the least of your problems. But we want them to be comfortable, and surgeons need to know that they're going to work and they're going to continue to work properly. So Objet really allows designers to put these tools into physicians' hands early on in the medical device development phases. They're going to be able to produce a proof of concept and get it into a physician's hands to actually feel, hold, work with, knowing that it's highly accurate and a nice simulation of the end product. Some of the other categories where these, where Objet parts can be used, going to be from implants to drug delivery systems, of course, diagnostics equipment through the development process, clinical laboratory instruments, surgical devices, and pharmaceutical packaging. So Objet systems are used by a broad range of companies in this field to help them with their product development and reducing errors and reducing overall costs in the development process, while, of course, condensing their timescales dramatically. So another unique application for Objet are the direct manufacturing of hearing aids. So I'm going to go through a little bit of this technology as well as some of the traditional methods and now the newer digital methods for producing hearing aids. So there's really two main groups. You have the in-the-ear devices, which are going to fit over the outer ear, which Objet does not offer solutions for. The in-the-ear devices is not really a great application for the Objet technology. Now, the behind-the-ear devices that go outside are a perfect application. And these are going to be a small case fitting behind the ear, and that sound will be conducted through an ear vent pipe. And it's typically for mild to profound hearing losses, and then more common in the elderly market and overseas markets. So here you can see a traditional manual process versus the newer digital process. And by going to a digital process, you're eliminating a lot of the areas where human error is involved, the manual cut and trim, the casting, the impressions, the investment, shelling, venting, shelling again, copies, reproduced, electronics, and then you're checking. Once you've gone to a digital workflow, you go from an impression to a 3D scan, planning digitally, printing, cleaning, placing electronics, and quality checking. So it's highly customizable, much faster throughput, and the results, of course, are improved for the patients. And this is a real unique area where the 3D printing as prototyping crosses with the actual direct manufacturing and mass production with individual customization. And this is going to be also a factor in braces and development of prosthetics. There's a wide range of areas where this is going to be extremely helpful, being able to utilize 3D scanning, virtual digital planning, and 3D printing to produce highly customizable medical devices and implantables. So there's 3 hearing aid materials that Objet offers. We have, of course, the biomedical materials. You're going to have excellent durability, and you're going to have really high quality prints. So you have very great accuracy, which ultimately will result in the comfort. So ultimately, that's the run through on the medical applications. There's a wide range of applications. Hopefully, this at least gave you an overview and a good idea of some of the potential for this technology and how you can use it in your company, and some things to think about kind of as you move forward with future projects. So at this point, I think if you guys have any questions, I'd love to answer them. And I know we'll have Priya there as well, who can field some questions as well. So I don't know, Julia, if you want to take it from here, but I'd be happy to answer any questions if there are any.
So I guess I'll first, that was a great presentation. First, I will open the floor for questions for us currently on site. And I've also invite the online attendees to please enter your questions into the chat area, and we'll relay those to Dylan. So do you have any questions? Okay, we have a question here.
Yeah, you had a little earpiece that you had in one of your last slides. How long did it take to make that part?
Oh, for the hearing aid portion, is that the one you're referring to?
Yeah, a little clear little part.
Yeah, those, I mean, literally are, 30 minutes, maybe 40 minutes. But the way the technology works, because it's inkjet based, and if you think about the way your home printer works, as it does lines of text, it does swipes, patches of text at a time. Objet does the same thing with their printing media. So if you line up a bunch of these hearing aids in a row, it's going to take virtually the same amount of time. So although it may take 30 to 40 minutes to produce one, more than likely that user is printing 10 or 20 in that time.
And it would just take a few more minutes to print 5 more or 8 more, however many fill in that print lane on the printer.
Any
what's the stock material? Is it a sheet or a form or a round or?
It's a liquid toner cartridge, actually. So it's similar to the larger format, 2D printers in an office where you'll have the toner canister. The Objet cartridges are fairly large, 3.6 kilograms for the larger machines, 1 kilogram for the smaller machines. But they load in, on the fly. You have multiple cartridges loaded at one time, so it'll auto change over. They're very efficient systems.
I have a question too for you. What is the minimum size? Because a lot of medical device companies do a lot of catheter development. So what's the minimum size for a hollow tube that you can actually, or a catheter size element that you can actually print with these systems?
Sure. So one factor in that is being able to clean the support media out of the part. I have seen, I would say I've seen diameters in right around probably a 0.5 millimeter to 1 millimeter. The trick is really the number of bends and curves in that channel. If you want to be able to get a needle into the hole, ideally, to be able to clean it, but you also do use a water pick system for the support removal. So sometimes the water itself is enough to clear the channel. So it is very geometry dependent, how far you can push the system's limits. So it's kind of hard to speak to generally, but I have seen 0.5 and 1 millimeter diameter holes before. It just depends on the length of that channel.
And the tolerance? I guess what kind of accuracy are we talking about?
So the accuracy is, and on this slide here, there's probably more than is necessary, but you can take a look here if you want to be on the micron level or not. Let's see here. Oops. So if you see here, 20 to 85 microns for features below 50 millimeters. I would say more generally that 0.1 to 0.3 millimeter overall accuracy is a safe bet. The smaller the part, the more accurate it is. When you're building over the full tray, that's where the higher numbers you see come involved.
And one final follow-up to that is, so say you have a whole device and there's some very fine detail on it, and you have some coarser detail like the handle or something. Are you able to send in some kind of surface file, and then you guys are able to say, just if the fine detail isn't technologically possible to print that fine detail, can you just coarsen it to? Is that something that you would do to the file to create the model, the 3D model?
Oh, so are you saying, so if the features were so small that it couldn't be accurately produced, actually maybe making those features slightly exaggerated to show the idea? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, I just wanted to, so, I mean.
Yeah, we have software that allows us to fairly easily make offsets and changes. Sometimes we'll need to modify thickness slightly when we're working with customers on their specific files and projects. But certainly, sometimes features will be slightly exaggerated, which will give you the idea that you're trying to achieve. But the reality is with these systems, you can get really, really fine details, especially with textures. So I'd be curious to see if you had a specific example to see the file, but they're very, very good at very fine surface detailing.
Okay. I didn't see any questions from online, but if you have questions, please email us at webinar@hanteltech.com, and we'll be happy to forward them to either Priya or Dylan or others. And I just want to take a quick moment to also show what our upcoming event is next month. Or actually, it's this month, but so we were going to have a speaker from the Food and Drugs branch on May 31st, and they're going to help talk about the medical device company licensing and other issues. This particular event will not be broadcasted, so if you would like to be present, please try to save the date and make it, please come and visit on site. So I guess I don't know if, and I want to also mention if Priya had anything else to add, otherwise we'll...
If you have any questions about the models themselves, and if you do have any projects, we'd love for you guys to send them our way so we can start working with you. Our lead time is generally 1 to 3 business days. You just email us your files. Yeah.
All right. So thank you so much, Dylan, for your great filling in on such notes.
No.
But it was great. And nice.
No problem. I hope it was beneficial for you guys. Okay, have a great rest of the day. Bye.
Can we just check out the models up here? Any other questions about our printing, service printing?
So you're using just the word printing, but actually you are molding